At some point, you became convinced your life would look different than this. Not perfect, not luxury, just better. You thought by now you'd be further ahead, more stable, more disciplined, the kind of person who had things handled, the kind of person who didn't feel nervous checking their bank account before paying for something small. And somewhere along the way, that idea turned into a number. $100,000. Not because it sounds rich, because it sounds like proof. Proof that you figured it out. Proof that all the stress, all the trying, all the years of saying, "I'm working on it," actually led somewhere. And here's the part that most people get wrong. They think reaching $100,000 is about making more money. Usually it isn't. Usually the reason people never get there is much simpler and much harder to admit. They keep leaving the process too early. They want the result, but they can't survive how slow the beginning feels. That's the real trap. Because $100,000 is rarely blocked by intelligence. It's usually blocked by impatience. And that hurts because deep down, you always thought you'd get there. You thought this version of your life was temporary. You thought the struggling part was the beginning, not the whole story. You assumed one day things would click and you'd become the person you kept promising yourself you'd become. You've probably imagined it before. Opening your account and seeing six figures. No panic, no pretending, no quiet guilt every time money gets mentioned. Just relief. The kind of relief that makes you sit there for a second and think, finally. Maybe that's why it frustrates you so much, because the dream never really left. Even now you still have those moments. Late at night, random Tuesday, looking at your account longer than you should. I should have more by now. I know I'm capable of more than this. This can't be it. And for a moment, it feels urgent again. You make the plan. New budget, new discipline, new mindset. This time you're serious. This year is different. For a while you believe it. Then life happens. Bills, burnout, bad habits. One expensive month, one bad decision. One moment of, "I deserve this." Progress feels too slow, too small, too invisible. And without ever saying it out loud, you stop. Not forever, just long enough to feel disappointed in yourself again. Then a few months later, you're back. Same dream, same promise, same frustration. Because part of you still believes your life changes at $100,000. And maybe it does. But wanting wealth and being built for wealth are not the same thing. And that's where most people lose. Everyone wants $100,000. But wanting it and being built for it are two completely different things. A lot of people are emotionally committed to the goal, but structurally, they're still living in survival mode. They want long-term wealth with short-term systems. That's the real gap, because making money and building wealth are not the same thing. Making money is earning. Building wealth is creating something that keeps working even when you're tired, distracted, burned out, or having a bad month. Most people focus on the first part. Very few build the second. Take something like YouTube. A channel can change your life. It can create income faster than most jobs ever could. But what happens if views drop? What happens if burnout hits? What happens if the algorithm changes, the niche dies, or the channel gets demonetized? If one platform controls your peace, that isn't wealth. That's dependence. And the same thing happens everywhere. One paycheck, one client, one side hustle, one good month. People feel safe because money came in, but income without protection is just temporary relief. If one bad month can wipe everything out, the system was never built for wealth. It was built for survival. And survival is expensive, because every setback feels like starting over. The real problem is not starting with one thing. The problem is stopping there. Most people treat the first income source like the finish line. The job, the business, the channel. But the first thing should be the doorway, not the destination. If you build a YouTube channel, the goal should not just be views. The real question is, what does this lead to? Can it become products, templates, courses, consulting, an email list, multiple revenue streams, something you own instead of something you borrow from a platform? That's the shift, from income to infrastructure, from making money to building a machine that keeps making money. The same applies to a normal job. A job should lead to skills. Skills should lead to leverage. Leverage should lead to ownership. That's how wealth starts. Not from one lucky month, from structure. A lot of people secretly believe, if this one thing works, I'm set. One channel, one investment, one business, one big break. But wealth rarely comes from one event. It comes from layers, systems stacked over time, repeated structure. That's what people miss. They are chasing the result without building the machine that creates the result. And when that fragile system starts shaking, panic begins. That's when people stop building and start chasing speed. That's where the real damage starts. Most people are not failing because they chose the wrong path. They're failing because they keep leaving the right one too early. This is where impatience becomes expensive. Real wealth building is repetitive. Same work, same habits, same small progress, saving monthly, posting consistently, learning skills, reinvesting profits, showing up when nothing looks impressive. And because it feels boring, people assume it isn't working. They confuse boring with broken. That's the first crack. People think, if this was the right path, I'd feel it by now. I'd see more by now. It should look bigger than this. But the beginning of almost everything worthwhile looks underwhelming. The first $5,000 feels small. The first few clients feel small. The first year of consistency feels small. The early stage is emotionally brutal because progress exists, but it doesn't feel like progress. That's where most people leave. Not because the plan failed, because uncertainty became unbearable. And instead of staying, they find something new. A new side hustle, a new content strategy, a new business idea, a new investment, a new motivation cycle. It feels productive. But often it's just emotional escape. Starting over feels exciting because starting gives you hope. Staying requires patience, and patience feels harder when results are invisible. This is productive distraction. You're busy. Researching, planning, preparing, changing strategy, getting ready for the next big thing. It feels like movement, but motion is comforting. Consistency is what pays. That distinction changes everything. Because every reset kills momentum. You lose time, you lose trust in yourself. You lose the compounding that was quietly building underneath the surface. You lose systems that might have worked if you had simply stayed. People spend years trying without ever staying anywhere long enough for results to become visible. That's why hardworking people still feel stuck. They mistake movement for progress. They think the answer is a better strategy, when often the answer is staying with the current one longer. Most people are not failing. They're just repeatedly leaving the path that would have worked. And once you realize that, the question changes. It stops being, what should I do next? And becomes, what should I stop abandoning? Because wealth doesn't usually reward the fastest person. It rewards the person who can stay. This is the part nobody wants to hear. The people who reach their first $100,000 usually do not look impressive while they're doing it. They look boring. People imagine wealth looking dramatic, huge wins, massive breakthroughs, life-changing moments, one perfect investment, one overnight business, one breakthrough that changes everything at once. But most first $100,000 stories are painfully ordinary. Saving monthly, keeping expenses low, reinvesting profits, building slowly, staying with the same system for years. It doesn't look exciting while it's happening. That's why people underestimate it. They are waiting for something dramatic when the real answer is repetition. People get inspired for 2 weeks all the time. They start strong. They feel motivated. They become the new version of themselves. Then motivation disappears. That's where the real game starts. Because discipline matters more than intensity. Repetition matters more than talent. Consistency matters more than inspiration. The people who win are usually not the smartest people in the room. They're the people who kept going after the excitement disappeared. For a long time, wealth is invisible. No applause, no visible upgrade, no proof for anyone else. Just small numbers growing quietly in the background. Quiet discipline, quiet patience, quiet trust. Most people quit here because invisible progress feels like no progress. But this is exactly where wealth is being built. Not in the dramatic moments, in the ordinary ones. And maybe that's the hardest part. Nobody congratulates boring progress. Nobody notices discipline. Nobody claps for the months where nothing looks different. But that's where your life changes. Quietly, slowly, without permission. That's why the real skill is not earning, it's staying. Staying when it feels slow, staying when it feels small, staying when nobody notices, staying when the process stops being exciting and starts becoming repetitive. That is the separator. Not intelligence, not luck, not perfect timing. Emotional endurance. The first $100,000 usually doesn't go to the smartest person. It goes to the person who stayed when progress looked invisible. And maybe the truth is, you were never as far away as you thought. You just kept expecting wealth to arrive like a moment, when most of the time it arrives like a habit. Quiet, unimpressive, repeated. That's why most people never get there. Not because it was impossible, because it was slower than they were willing to believe.